What would drive a mother to do the unthinkable? To look into the eyes of her own children and decide their fate? This was supposed to be a story about hope, a desperate mother searching for her kidnapped sons. But what unfolded next shocked America, exposing a chilling truth hidden beneath layers of lies. Susan Smith became the face of every parent's worst nightmare. For 9 days, the nation rallied behind her, praying for the safe return of Michael and Alex. But as investigators dug deeper, cracks began to form in her story. And when the truth finally came out, it left an indelible scar on the collective conscience of America. Today, we dive deep into the twisted mind of Susan Smith, unraveling how trauma, desperation, and selfishness led to one of the most horrifying crimes in modern history. Susan Smith wasn't born evil. She was just a child when tragedy first struck her life. In 1977, at only 6 years old, she lost her father to suicide. For any child, losing a parent is devastating. But for Susan, it marked the beginning of a lifetime of pain. She clung to memories of him, his voice, his presence, as if they could shield her from the chaos around her. But instead of finding stability, Susan's world crumbled further when her mother remarried. What should have been a fresh start turned into a nightmare. Her stepfather began abusing her, and no one stepped in to protect her, not even her own mother. By the time she reached adulthood, Susan carried scars invisible to the naked eye but deeply etched into her soul, and these scars would shape every decision she made moving forward. A psychologist might say that Susan's early experiences planted the seeds of instability. A child who grows up without love or protection often struggles to trust others, and sometimes themselves. This lack of trust would follow Susan into adulthood, shaping her relationships and ultimately leading her down a dark path. For a brief moment, it seemed like Susan had found happiness. She met David, fell in love, and gave birth to 2 beautiful boys, Michael and Alex. They were her second chance, her reason to live, or so we thought. But behind closed doors, things weren't perfect. Susan struggled with depression, loneliness, and a longing for something more. Her marriage to David was fraught with arguments and instability. Though they tried to make it work, their relationship eventually crumbled under the weight of unresolved issues. After her marriage ended, Susan met another man, a charming businessman named Tom Findlay. To Susan, he represented escape, freedom, a new beginning. But there was one problem standing in her way: her children. When Tom ended things, citing her kids as the reason, Susan felt trapped once again, abandoned, desperate. And in that darkness, a sinister idea began to take root, an idea so monstrous it defied all logic. How far would she go to erase the obstacles standing between her and the life she dreamed of? Would she sacrifice everything, even her own flesh and blood? On October 25, 1994, Susan drove her sons to a quiet lake under the pretense of spending quality time together. To Michael and Alex, this seemed like an ordinary outing, a chance to bond with their mother and enjoy the simple pleasures of childhood. Little did they know this trip would mark the end of their short lives, sealing their fates in one of the most harrowing tragedies ever recorded. As Susan parked the car near the water's edge, there were no signs that anything was amiss. She had carefully planned every detail, ensuring that her actions would appear plausible if questioned later. Once she tied her children securely inside the vehicle, she began pushing it slowly toward the lake. The car crept forward inch by inch until gravity took over, pulling it into the cold, dark waters below. As the car sank beneath the surface, panic set in for Michael and Alex. They cried out for help, their small voices echoing through the stillness of the night. But their mother stood silently on the lake, emotionless and detached, watching as the lake swallowed them whole. In the aftermath of the crime, Susan unleashed what can only be described as the performance of a lifetime. With tears streaming down her face and a look of desperation etched into her features, she appeared on national television, pleading for her son's safe return. "Please bring my babies back," she begged, appealing not just to authorities, but to the hearts of millions across America. Her portrayal of a grieving mother was so convincing that the entire nation rallied behind her, demanding justice for Michael and Alex. But even as sympathy poured in, investigators couldn't shake the feeling that something about Susan's story didn't add up. Questions lingered. Why would a kidnapper go through the trouble of stealing a car and abducting 2 children, only to leave the mother alive as a witness? And why did Susan seem eerily composed despite supposedly losing everything she held dear? These inconsistencies gnawed at the investigators, prompting them to dig deeper. As evidence mounted against her, cracks in Susan's carefully constructed façade began to show. Phone records, witness testimonies, and forensic analysis painted a damning picture. Finally, 9 days after the alleged kidnapping, Susan confessed under intense police questioning. What emerged was a horrifying truth that shook the nation to its core. Susan Smith had killed her own sons, callously ending their lives in pursuit of personal freedom, and then framed an innocent black man to cover her tracks. Susan's decision to fabricate a story involving a black kidnapper was particularly insidious, exploiting deep-seated racial prejudices prevalent in America at the time. This calculated move demonstrated not only her cunning ability to manipulate public perception, but also a chilling disregard for human decency. By casting blame on someone else, she sought to deflect suspicion while perpetuating harmful stereotypes. It was a desperate attempt to save herself, regardless of the cost to others. The trial that followed gripped the nation, drawing widespread attention and sparking heated debates about morality, accountability, and mental health. Prosecutors painted Susan as a cold-blooded killer who sacrificed her children for selfish desires, portraying her actions as premeditated and heartless. Defense attorneys countered by arguing that Susan suffered from severe psychological issues stemming from years of unresolved trauma, suggesting that her mental state impaired her judgment. Yet despite these arguments, the jury remained unconvinced. After deliberating for less than 2 hours, they delivered their verdict: guilty. Susan was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, ensuring that she would never walk free again. While justice may have been served in the eyes of the law, the scars left behind by this tragedy will never fully heal. For Michael and Alex's family, the pain is unrelenting, a void that can never be filled. For those who watched the case unfold, it served as a stark reminder of humanity's capacity for cruelty. And for Susan herself, the consequences of her actions are inescapable. Over 3 decades later, she claims to feel regret, stating that she would give anything to turn back time and undo the devastation she caused. But forgiveness is a complex concept, especially when weighed against such unspeakable loss. Can redemption truly exist for someone who committed such a heinous act? Or does some damage run too deep to ever be repaired? David, the children's father, has made it his mission to ensure that Susan remains accountable for her crimes. At every parole hearing, he stands firm, vowing to fight against her release. He reminds the parole board that granting Susan freedom would dishonor the memory of Michael and Alex, whose lives were tragically cut short. His determination reflects the enduring love of a parent unwilling to let their children fade into obscurity. Susan Smith's story is a haunting reminder of how trauma can twist a person beyond recognition. From a young age, she endured unimaginable hardships, losing her father to suicide, enduring sexual abuse at the hands of her stepfather, and facing abandonment and rejection throughout her life. While these experiences undoubtedly shaped her, they do not excuse her actions. Instead, her story serves as a cautionary tale, a warning that our choices define us far more than our circumstances ever could. Difficult circumstances don't absolve responsibility, but they do highlight the importance of resilience and support systems. Some individuals rise above adversity, emerging stronger and more compassionate. Others succumb to despair, allowing their pain to consume them entirely. Ultimately, it is our response to life's challenges that defines who we become. Susan's descent into darkness underscores the devastating consequences of failing to confront one's demons head-on. If you found this story impactful, please share it with others. Let us honor Michael and Alex by ensuring their memory lives on, not as victims of senseless violence, but as reminders of the fragility of life and the importance of protecting those we love. Together, we can keep their legacy alive and prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future.